One in Three is intended for mature audiences. Episodes contain explicit content and may be triggering as they often include violence and other varying forms of abuse such as emotional, psychological, sexual, and physical. In most cases, names have been changed to protect all involved. Please note, statements and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of my own. Hi, warriors. Welcome to One in Three. I'm your host, Ingrid. Most of the conversations on this podcast center around intimate partner violence. But we all know domestic violence does not just involve romantic partners. It can also exist between parent-child relationships. One aspect of that dynamic I haven't fully explored yet is what happens when those children grow into adults. Joining me today is Amy, who shares her personal experience with parental estrangement and the complicated pressures that can come with caring for those aging parents. Here's Amy. Hi, Amy. Thank you for joining me and welcome to One in Three.
Hey, Ingrid. Thanks for having me.
Okay, we have an interesting take, I think, on today's episode, one that I haven't covered before, but one that definitely needs to be covered. But before we get into all of that, could you just share a little bit about yourself, professionally, personally, whatever you feel comfortable with, just so that listeners can get to know you some?
Sure. Yeah. Where do you start, right? So I do a little bit of everything. I'm a business owner. In personal life, I have, my small family and, I've dealt with estrangement. I've dealt with, I'm divorced. So I've dealt with, some abuse in that situation. And really just trying to navigate, because of what I do for work. I work in elder care and I'm trying to navigate blending my experiences because that kind of makes the best education. I educate people for a living about how to be in a no contact or estrangement from family, specifically aging parents, and in that caregiving role. And should you come into a caregiving role, and kind of all the things in between, because it's not one size fits all. It's not yes or no. It's very gray zone. And so I educate people in that gray zone.
How did you choose to get into elder care?
I have been in elder care for 21 years. And so I really just came out of school and I did my marketing degree and then I did my psychology degree. And like the last course in psychology was psychology of aging. And so I just kind of found that then. And then I spent 10 years in retirement living in marketing. And I just really wanted to help in the community. What you see when you come to a retirement home, like the person doing the marketing is much different than what I see in the community and all the extra things. And really family dynamics and caregiving are hand in hand. And for a long time in my career, we addressed the whole spectrum of it. But most of our clients were in this, we can have conversations, we can get things moving situation. And then we had a number of people that couldn't get anywhere. They didn't know what to do. There were shut down conversations and all sorts of stuff. And a lot of the advice earlier was, you're going to have to wait for a crisis to be able to do anything, which is still kind of the advice. But then when I estranged from my family and I knew what that took, and I kind of did a lot of self-reflection and I looked into all of my background, I really felt like I could add my elder care expertise, but also with my personal background to say, I know what that takes. I know what the emotions are involved, and I know the healthcare system and how elder care works. And so let's talk about all of this stuff, because so many people were coming to me and considering whether, I've been estranged for, X amount of years, or we barely talk. And now I have to care for my parent, and there's so much guilt and grief and resentment. And so I just teach people how to look inwards first, figure out your stuff, and then go from that point, as opposed to crisis, chaos, guilt trips, all the stuff.
Yeah, and that's a point of view that I think, and it's my fault. This is my podcast, but I tend to overlook. I get very focused in on the intimate partner violence portion of domestic violence, but there is the parent to child abuse that can occur, or neglect, or whatever the dynamics may be. And even when that is a focus, when I am focusing on children, it's is the child, is not necessarily the adult child. And
Mhm.
obviously, at some point, most adults come into that point in their lives where they then feel obligated, or in healthy dynamics they want to take care of their aging parents. So this is definitely kind of a sticky situation of, especially with your experience in estrangement,
Mhm.
in how to proceed. What do you feel that you need to do, and how do you keep healthy boundaries while still also fulfilling what you feel you need to do as a child?
Yeah, it's very, very complicated. The emotions are raised like they are, in healthy family dynamics, but the emotions are different. It's more like I don't want to see my parent aging, so I might not have those conversations of elder care, and I might not do stuff. I don't want to look at that. I don't want to think about death. Everybody equates elder care and retirement living and long-term care with death. And it's not. Like, elder care can be decades long, right? Like, you're planning out many, many things. And so there's all that kind of wrapped in there. And then when you get, like, I kind of have like a 3 zone, right? It's like you've got full care, you're able to have those conversations. You get into the limited care where it's really difficult. You're still hanging on, you're still trying to make it work. The family dynamics are tough. And so, like, it's frustration and like going around in circles nonstop. And then you get into like the no care access, where it's like sort of like me, where it's like I don't have access. And so, do how do I operate from there? And a lot of the emotions in that are more like grief. Guilt is still there. I would say guilt is kind of more in the middle a little bit more, because once you're kind of in the estranged zone or no contact zone, a lot of that guilt has lifted a little bit for me anyway, because I'm used to being gaslit and stuff like that. So, like, when you're in that zone, once you can clear it and step out of it, it's more grief in that zone, and thinking about, like, I would have been there and now I can't be there. So when I've been writing a book, and I just recently started calling it revoked role grief, where it's like I was going to be there. I have the expertise to do it. I'm like completely capable of doing it, but my role was revoked because of the situation. And the grief around that is different than the other grief that I was dealing with before. Like, there's, they talk about disenfranchised grief and stuff like that, right? And it's like where there's like no ending, and like nobody is like acknowledging that you're even dealing with anything, because there's no funeral, there's no casseroles. And so with the revoked role grief, it's really in the fact that, like, I can't be there because the dynamics won't let me, even though I'm very empathetic, even though I very much would have wanted to help my parents. So the people that I help, there's a lot of people in that zone where they had to save themselves, but now they're like, do I step in?
Yeah, and what an interesting take, revokes role grief, because it's almost that there's still that power dynamic, not necessarily where there is an individual who is purposely lording control over you, but you, that revoked part, you're losing that portion of control. So even though somebody may not be actively taking that away from you, you still have that loss of
Mhm.
power, more or less.
And it's lost its identity, right? It's like I would have been the child that was a caregiver to my parents. Anything can change, but that's kind of where you're that's where I'm at the moment. And it's like that thought process, and it just, estrangement has so many layers of grief in it that, like, they all start to blend again together. And I would just really felt like that was so different. Like, it's just, I think it's because I work in elder care, right? And it's just that other piece that I haven't heard anybody talk about. And it's all these caregivers and adult women, adult children, a lot of that would really, really wanted to be there, but just can't. They can't have access, or they can't step in because it's not safe. And it just carries its own grief.
Can we talk about estrangement a little bit? Because healthy boundary setting is something that I do talk about frequently. And you need to be able to set healthy boundaries in all aspects of your life: work, friends, family, intimate partners. And I think it's more difficult for people to understand. There's the societal pressures, there's the familial pressures, all these pressures to, as a child, try to continue what you are putting into a healthy relationship, but it's not healthy coming from the parents. So how do you make that determination of, I've done what I can, I need to look at myself and I need to step away?
For me, it was really the round and round of the conversations. Going to be estranged is not just like, oh, I'm done. Like, it's not a one and done situation. It's really like a million tiny cuts. Right. And so that's why people don't see it. That's why, like, outside society, friends, things like that, they don't see it because a lot of it is behind the doors. Like, even in, like, specifically narcissistic family systems, it's all behind the doors. Nobody sees it. Nobody knew. And so, you're really trying to navigate that all the time. And then, as like, sometimes there's what I call, like, kind of like bursts, right? Like, something really heated happens, right? And so you're trying to navigate that as well. And so it just finally gets to a point where you kind of have some clarity around it. It's not a great point. Like, no contact sucks, to be honest, but it's not a great point that you get to and you're like, I can't fix this. Like, I've tried to fix this. I've done all these things. I've communicated in all these ways, and I'm going to have to take a step back. And it just, for me, was just a clarity situation where it's just like, my family just kind of kept coming at me. I'm the scapegoat in our family. And so when you're gaslit all your life and they just keep blaming you for everything, and you realize that as a human being, like, I know who I am. And so, and I also have a young child. And so there's also that generational trauma of breaking that as well. I think that she helped me see clearer because like, the way that I was acting, not necessarily on purpose, but like in reaction to a lot of stuff, was definitely affecting her. And so, even though I didn't have that clarity at that point, when I stepped out within months, our situation here just calmed right down. And so that's the extra clarity you get, right? Like, some of the things I've looked up, which was interesting, is like, how this stuff kind of affects asthma, right? And so she had asthma for a while. And then when I stepped out of the family dynamic, her asthma went away because our relationship kind of mended in a different way. Immediately, my anxiety disappeared. I've been on anxiety meds for all of my adult life, and I literally just stopped taking them cold. My digestion improved, all of that stuff. And so, there was a little bit of clarity before and there's a lot of clarity after, right? So it's like more of a, like, you just have to trust yourself and make that leap. And once you start kind of, like, I did a lot of research because you tend to be in your head a lot. You're people pleasing. You're trying to rework conversations and whatnot. And once you start looking into it and you kind of have that thought process, it starts to become clearer and clearer of the dynamic that you're in. And then I always say, once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? Like, it's like, once you are, like, looking at that dynamic, it is a bit easier to kind of step back, and it's like, I don't want it to be in that.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the physical aspects because any kind of anxiety, stress, abuse that you are experiencing, it definitely does have an impact on your physical well being. And so, did you find yourself? I know you said this took a long time, but did you find yourself kind of mini estrangement and then going back?
Not at
It was
all.
just all
Yeah,
clarity
I
and you
would
were
not have,
done.
surprisingly, I would not have expected it, actually. I didn't want to do it. It wasn't something that was on my mind. I know that there's a lot of talk at the moment about how, like, because I'm a millennial, it's like how millennials are, estranging from their parents and all that stuff, which is also why my work in elder care is important, because all those millennials also have parents and we're all going to be in a mess soon, right? So, um, it was never on the plate. In fact, I had a really distant type relationship with my family, and until my daughter was born. And then I really felt like they would be good grandparents. They were fine grandparents, right? So it's like, I thought that we could mend it through that relationship, and it worked for a while. But when the underlining situation is so tumultuous, I just found that, like, I thought we could fix it with that. It was okay for a while. It wasn't great. And the thing is that the patterns are the patterns. And so once you start seeing the patterns, right, like, you just, like, they don't change. People don't change that easily unless they want it, and they didn't want it. So we just kind of ended up in the situation where it was just like, you know what, enough's enough. I can't do this anymore.
Have you found with seeing other adult children being estranged from their parents, have you seen that it's a full family estrangement, or are you able to estrange from just one individual in the family?
There's mixtures. There's a lot of people that have siblings that they can still that are still good for relationships. There's sometimes one parent or another, and a lot of that has been if there was like a divorce. There's been whatnot. Like, I've got friends in the same situation where they've estranged from their dad, but not their mom. I have other, like, multiple family members in my family that have estranged from their parents, like cousins and stuff like that. So it's like, it's a, when you talk about generational, right? Like, it's a family thing, right? It's coming down the line, which is interesting to me because I have a psych background as well. So it's very interesting in that way. But they still have relationships with their siblings. I unfortunately have no relationship with any of them. So, and even, like, I've tried to keep a relationship with my father, but it just wasn't going to work because of the environment that he was in. Right. And it's just, some things are really out of your hands, and that comes with a lot of grief too, because you hold on for so long because you want the relationship and you never wanted to do it in the first place. And then you just get to a point where there's nothing else you can do.
Right, because all you're hoping for is just that healthy dynamic, that person you want them to be. And I think
Yeah.
that part is relatable to the intimate partner violence, is that you're just
Mhm.
hoping that partner becomes this person that you like get a glimpse of what they can be, and that's what you want them to
Yeah.
be. So there's a lot of grief then, because you may not just be losing that one person. You can be
No.
losing multiple people.
Yeah. All on one foul swoop. They're all gone. Right. And for me, it was more gradual. Like, my sibling went first, and then my mother, then my father. Right. Like, I held on because my father also understands this dynamic. He estranged from his mom, which was extra painful for me because he knows it. He understands it, but that's what trauma bonding does, right? Like, that's what happens when you've been in these relationships for 70 plus years. Like, that's what the trauma bonding is that you just, like, that's all you know. So that was extra hard to let go of, like, because I had so much more empathy for him because he'd been in similar scenarios. Um, but it just, like, you just can't. It just gets to a point. So it's like, it was one fell swoop in terms of, like, everybody, but stepped, like, it was staged out a little bit. So but then you get to a point where he's just a delivery person for my mother's messages, and then I can't do that anymore.
Do you also experience some grief for your daughter, or is that just something that that this is an unhealthy dynamic that you'd rather protect her from, and she doesn't need to be exposed to it? Or is there a grief of not knowing her grandparents?
So the reason that I tried for this relationship again when she was born is that I had a grandmother, my nanny, for the first 15 years of my life, which was just not long enough, right? So I really wanted that for my daughter. And like I said, it's not that they were bad grandparents. It's that the choices as we started getting further out, like as she started getting older and our cousins started getting older and the relationship between my sibling and I kind of broke down, um, I could start seeing those patterns repeat, right? The choosing of the other sibling, the choosing of the other granddaughter. And so that's one of the reasons as well, because I tried for a relationship with them too. Like, I stepped out, and I had my husband manage it. And just, like, if they want to talk, that's fine. Like, I never took it. I really tried to keep it. But then what happened was my efforts were never good enough. Right. And so everything was being blamed on me. Like, oh, she didn't want to talk to me today. It's your fault. Right. And it's like, why aren't you making this work? It's your fault. And then like, I got a letter at one point. It's like, well, I'll just wait until you do everything. And then, and if you want a relationship, then you get back in touch with me for her. And it's like, she just gave up. Right. And it's like, I can't put the effort forward if I'm not going to communicate with you. That like you have to carry the relationship and you can't blame me for it. So there is guilt. There's a bit of guilt. I don't think it's a lot. There's more grief, to your point, about her not having that, because she doesn't have the grandparents on the other side because they're both deceased. And so really sucks. And she's really young. And so like, there's some explanation around, but to be honest, based on how I'm seeing this play out in her young life, I think she could probably feel it too. She's highly empathetic like I am. And I think she just could feel those vibes of what was happening. And she's seen me improve. And like, that's just in the environment, right? Like, we're not bad mouthing anybody. We're not talking about it really. Like, I will be available. I check in with her. She seems to be okay. I think, as she gets older, there'll be more questions, which is fair. But like for now, and, she's got an aunt that stepped up, really stepped up, which is amazing. And so she's okay with that at the moment. So I guess we'll have to see how that plays out.
Now, this question might be a little bit out of your realm, but since you have that psych background and that interest in it, do you have any idea why you think there are so many millennials that are becoming estranged from their parents? And I ask that just because I'm Gen X, but I think Gen X and millennials we can both have boomer parents. And I feel like there's a difference between Gen X and millennials, not saying one is better than the other, but almost that like for my generation, it's, well, whatever, suck it up, buttercup. I mean, we were taught that we just have to deal with things. So do you think there's something specific that the millennials have come across that we have not discovered?
I literally just had this conversation the other day with a friend who's Gen X, right? And it's like, I think that it's just that, it's not that we weren't taught to suck it up. I'm considered a geriatric millennial. So like, I'm an older millennial. I love that for me. But like, so we're close in that, right? And it's like, I think what's happening is that younger than millennials, the mental health initiatives that they're taking and the requirements of like not putting up with stuff or whatever, I feel like that's influencing the millennials a little bit. But also like, we're doing a lot of self-help too. Like, I'm going to be 45, right? So it's like, we're having kids a little later. We're seeing how those dynamics lay out. We're working, there's two people working in the household a lot of the time. And there's just not enough time to put up with all the crap, right? Like, it's just like, it's not like, I don't feel like anybody really wants to estrange. It's not something like we're like, I can't wait to do that. It's terrible. But I just think that in general, I think people are fed up, and because we're able to put more emphasis on our mental health, and because there's more resources and communication around it so that you can understand what's happening to you, I think that helps. Like, when I first kind of started wondering if this is something I should do, I dug into narcissistic family systems and all of that stuff. And the one thing that I walked away with immediately was, oh my God, I'm not crazy. Like, if you're gaslit for 40 plus years, that was some of the realization. And I think that once you see that stuff and once you realize, like, sure, we all contribute to that relationship, but in child psych, right, it's the parent's role to maintain and fix relationships. It's not the child's role, regardless if I'm an adult, it's the parent's role. And so with all that background and with all that knowledge and the research and stuff, and just starting to see people, even accounts on Instagram and different things like that are talking about it, I just felt less crazy. I just felt like, oh my God, actually people are saying what I'm thinking. But before I looked into it, I felt really alone. It was super isolating. So I think that the social media in that way has helped because you're able to kind of like other people are experiencing this. And often it's not like really in your backyard. There's not a ton of people in your backyard that are experiencing it unless you're really, really in tune and you have like a lot of social network and stuff. I don't. And so when I started coming across it, it really helped to know that like I wasn't crazy. I'm not the only one, which is also why I'm writing my book, because it's like any extra information out there, it's not meant to say, oh, your parents are terrible and all that stuff. It's meant to say, hey, if you think this is the situation that you're in, like have a read of this information. And if it matches, it matches. Like, it's not like you're making it up. It's just that you didn't have an outlet for it before.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think that each generation is learning more about mental health. They're recognizing the importance of it, and it's more of an okay thing. It's not seen as a weakness anymore to go to therapy or to talk to people about your emotions. So let's to the same effect of the social media, everybody talking about it, it does give a lot of people a chance to identify with others and release some shame, release some guilt that
Mm.
shouldn't be theirs to carry in the first place. But so let's talk a little bit more about your book. So you part of the reason is because you wanted others to hear your story, hear what your thoughts are, and to identify. Is there anything else that pushed you into I need to write this book?
When I was going through the first year of this, I have dyslexia. And so I'm not a journaler. I don't read a lot. I wrote a book for my other book is out, which surprised me that I even wrote. I never expected to write books. Right. And so the way I explain information is different than other people. Like, I'm doing a bite size. I do it differently because of the way that I think. And so I've already seen that help people in my elder care space. I've already seen my resources and how that help. And so I kept a journal for myself for the first year to be able to go back again, because when I started, I honestly felt like I was half crazy. And so I was like, I'm just going to write down what's happening for whatever purpose I use it for later. Whatever, like if I use it at all, fine. If I don't, cool. And so I just kind of wrote down what was happening. And when I wrote I think I wrote like a good 20 to 30,000 words. It was so angry. It was so angry. And then I kept healing, right? So I purposely am healing and doing things to move through, and documenting it, because I also have a bit of a memory issue now because the trauma came at me so fast. And then perimenopause is kind of, super fun. All of it together. And so I'm like, I'm going to write it down, because the other thing is with gaslighting is they just say like, you're wrong. That didn't happen. And you're like, wait a minute, it did happen. And so I wrote it down for my own purposes. And so I started writing the book because I was like, it's a memoir style, more just to kind of tell the story. I read a book. I actually got through a book from somebody else, and I felt like they told the story of their estrangement, and it was good in that way. And it helped me kind of get to another level, but I felt like I outgrew that book really, really quickly. And that's just because of the way that I operate, because there was no, like, I tried this or I did that or whatever. It was just very memoir based, and that I like to learn as I go. And so I was like, I am going to write a book that's like teaching people what I did so that they have something to look into, because if you're unfamiliar, you might not know what tapping is, or like EFT or whatever. Right. And so you might not know. And then there's also the extra piece at the end of like how it hooks into what I actually do for elder care and how those dynamics and stuff hook together. And so that's the purpose. I'm still writing it. But I started again because as I healed, and then I reread, like you reread your copy, right? And so it's like multiple chapters, and I'm not even writing them in order, because it's just like, what did I feel like writing that day? And I just wrote it, but I reread it and I was like, I don't feel like that at all anymore, because you move past the anger eventually. And so I scrapped the whole thing and I started rewriting it. And so that's why I'm doing it. It's just like to show people actively, like, here's what happened, but we're not living here. We're not going to stay here. We're going to move through it. This is what I did. This is how it showed up. This is how it affected my kid. This is all the stuff that's happening. And this is why I talk about it mixed with elder care, because of all this other stuff that's happening. And that's where the revoked role grief came in as well. It's like, oh, wait, there is actually something, there's another piece of grief there that I haven't seen named. So I'm going to name it so that people have a more identified experience with that too.
I love that whole process of you writing the book, because I'm not a journal writer either. I've purchased since my teenage years many journals, and I might have like a day or two or something, and then I just get bored with it. But I've I've found different ways where it's somewhat journaling, and I think that is so helpful because, like you said, when you're gaslit for so long, you start to gaslight yourself and question, well, did that really happen even years ago? Did I maybe exaggerate? And journaling is so good because it helps you remember the process. And I hear you on the perimenopause. That is some crazy stuff. That's like
Yeah.
5 more podcast episodes just on that topic alone.
Yeah.
Um, but it helps with the memory. It helps you recall what actually happened. And then to see the process, it's the stages of grief, right? There's the denial, there's the anger, there's the bargaining. All these things can happen even if you haven't experienced like a death or a loss that's
Mhm.
that's that significant. But this is also a significant loss. It's a
Yeah.
loss of so many things. There's a loss of yourself, who you identified with as,
Mhm.
I'm a daughter, this is what I'm supposed to do, and these are my roles. And so I love that whole journaling process, and I think that a lot of people would be able to identify with that. When is your book expected? When are you expecting to?
I don't know yet. I'm just finishing. So I've taken on different modalities as I've been healing. As basic as like Reiki, right? Like, or something like that, energy movement and stuff like that. And so I'm going through like a neurologist type of situation for my brain waves right now, because my lows are really low and my highs are really high, and it's like really not good. But that's what happens when you've been in chronic stress, right? That's why it's called complex PTSD, right? It's just constant. And so I am waiting. The book's like just about written in full as it is, but there's a couple of other healing things that I'm doing that the book's on hold as I do that. And so it depends on how long it takes me to get through it. But the book is relatively finished. It's just that those extra little pieces, because I want people, if they are going to read it, to get something, to get direction. It is something to see, your experience in somebody else's words and say, oh, that's me. She's got it. And like, you didn't think anybody else ever felt that ever. And then it's also the extra value of like, well, what did she do? How did she get through it? Right. And so I've just put a lot of weight on that healing journey to make sure that I'm actually actively doing stuff to get through it. Because at the end of the day, I just decided I'm not living here. I'm not living in this headspace. If I was going to do it, I might as well have stayed. Right. Like, it's like, that's the headspace I was living in. And I just really wasn't healthy. And interestingly enough, to not about the book, but after I left, like I said, my digestion and my anxiety and all the stuff just started to heal. All these things that were just like plaguing me for years. And interestingly, I've actually in the last year been like precancerous at one point, and then also I had like a skin cancer situation as well. And it's like your body is like finally being able to release the stuff of whatever it's been holding on, which is scary. Nobody wants to deal with it, but like interesting too, that my body, I can tell my nervous system's regulating because things are starting to come out, that I can take care of now. So those are all the types of things that you learn on this journey, if you do the hard work, because it really is hard work.
Yeah, and I think that's so cool that you're including your experience with a whole healing portion. And it's a healing journey. I feel where I am today is leap years ahead of where I was. But it was hard, and I'm not done. I don't think anyone ever, like you said, it's complex. The trauma to get you there was complex. The healing part is also going to be complex. All of it is very complex. I don't know. There's always going to be scars, right? Like you can't, scars don't go away.
Well, and
So
you also have
there,
triggers too,
yes,
right?
yes.
Constantly. Like you can
Hmm.
deal with them, you can get less, but like I got triggered the other day, right? And it's just like the difference is that I know it and I know why it's happening, not just like operating in life going nuts, right? Like it's um and to your point too, like so when I divorced my ex-husband as well, you to your point, you are healing constantly, but at that point in my life, I divorced him when I was 28. And he was in that realm, right, of narcissism as well, generally speaking. And like I lost a whole social network, I lost all my stuff there, and it was painful. And I think that's also why I'm just like, I'm not staying here because it's a very similar dynamic. And I remember for 5 to 7 years still grieving all of the friend group that just dropped me. Right. And so it's like, I'm not going to do that this time. And this is like the second part of me kind of becoming who I am at this point, because it's like all these extra ties on you. And then you're like, no, that doesn't work for me anymore. You outgrew it. You moved on. You trust yourself, and you kind of move away from that. But there's always going to be triggers. There's always going to be things like that. I have friends that are dealing with similar situations, but they're not dealing with their triggers and they're not dealing with their healing. And so I've had to step away from people like that because it's just like they get triggered for something I say or do. And instead of having a conversation, and I'm very, very much like, let's just air it out. It's very shut down. It's very like, you did this. And it's like, that's a pattern in my life. So it's like, I can just step away easily now.
Yeah, I wish I could have this conversation with 20-year-old me and I could be this
Me
person
too. Yeah.
way back then. My goodness. Okay, so you touched on a few things that you were doing before, but could you just talk about everything that you have going on? You have a lot going on and a lot to offer people.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm about to start my new podcast again. I've done podcasts before with other people, but again, I'm a new person at this point. So because I'm still expanding our resources. So I run a company I'm in Ottawa, Canada, and so I run a company here to help with elder care planning called Tea and Toast, and we're really helping with all the people that can have conversations and navigating moves and stuff like that. And then I run a Canadian membership company called Elder Care Planners of Canada, which is an assortment of elder care planners across the country so that we can help people that are in this situation. And then while that's all running, I'm also running kind of like an Amy Friesen brand, specifically, where I'm developing a course right now to help with these difficult dynamics. And like I said, the full limited and no care access and how to deal with that and how to regulate yourself. And I have a methodology called Roots to help people walk through that. Because I think that there's just not enough information out there. And as we get into elder care and as more and more people are in this ball game, that means that more and more seniors are going to need different types of help. And so what's that going to look like, right? Like I've been developing this industry for so long. I can just have this vision now with this extra lens on it. And it's like, that's going to be a mess later. And it's no fault of the people estranging. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. It's not that. It's just that the combination of it is going to be a mess. And so I help people through that stuff so that they can decide what to do. And if they're not going to do it, what are the other options and things like that? Because you don't have to do everything. And there's different things that we can put into place, like different family members or retirement living or long-term care, whatever that is, right? And so there's different ways to plan for that. So I'm doing a lot of work in that zone as well.
Okay, and how do people find out more, follow along, get your book, look at you for coaching services, all of that?
Yeah, so amyfriesen.com has links to everything. If you're interested in the book, then I'd say put in for our newsletter, because it's at the bottom of the screen there. So if you do that, then you'll get notified for it. But my other book called Breadcrumbs is also there, which is leaning towards more of the elder care retirement living industry, people who can have conversations, the families that are not as dynamic as others. And then the courses are going to be there as well. So everything's there.
Okay, before I ask my next question, these names are so cute. Tea and Toast and Breadcrumbs. Where did they come from? Where did those come from?
Well, tea and toast is a double meaning. So tea and toast is like warm and cushy for the senior eating it. It's an easy meal. And it's a red flag for the adult child. It's like, Mom just ate that every day this week for every meal. So that's why that is kind of in that zone, so that it's sort of like, if you know, you know, otherwise you have no idea what I do. But it's like,
right.
It worked out all right. And Breadcrumbs I named because of that, just to like kind of play on it, but also the fact that when we see people, mostly they're coming with this little bucket of breadcrumbs. They have no idea how to attach things, how to like make systems work together, and like when to make decisions. And so they've got these like scattered pieces. And so as elder care planners, we kind of suck them in together, and it's like, here's the plan. And so we organize it.
That is so creative. I love that. Okay, so before we close, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we missed?
Not specifically. I think that I just want to, people to understand, probably the same as you, is you're not alone, right? There's a lot of people out there dealing with this stuff. And for me, they're dealing with the no contact or low contact, and like aging parents and what that looks like. It's really interesting how once you start talking about it, people then can see you kind of as that beacon, right? And then all these other extra conversations come out, and there's so many people dealing with the same stuff. And so it can feel really isolating. Also, if you're from that type of family dynamic, you're probably pretty isolated as it is, right? And so it feels isolating, but there's so much support out there, and there's so many people talking about it. It's just a matter of doing that research and like proving to yourself that you can trust yourself, and then looking for it.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for all of your work, for joining me today, and all of your ongoing work. I'm looking forward to your book. I think that's going to be incredibly helpful, and your podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you again, Amy, for joining me today, and thank you, warriors, for listening. I've included the links Amy was referring to, as well as her 1 in 3 profile, in the show notes. I will be back next week with another episode for you. Until then, stay strong, and wherever you are in your journey, always remember, you are not alone.
Find more information, register as a guest, or leave a review by going to the website 1in3podcast.com. That's the number 1, IN, the number 3, podcast.com. Follow 1 in 3 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1in3podcast. To help me out, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 1 in 3 is a .5 Pinoy production. Music written and performed by Tim Crow.